This story happened when I was 22. It didn't begin with a loud event. No heartbreak explosion. No dramatic goodbye. It began with silence. A silence so heavy, it felt like gravity had shifted. I remember the room. Dim light. Rain tapping against the window. You were there. I was there. But something between us had already left. We didn't fight. We didn't cry. We just stopped speaking. And in that quiet, everything screamed. I could hear the words I didn't say echoing inside me. Please don't go. I'm scared. I love you. But my lips stayed shut. I thought silence would protect me. That if I didn't speak, I wouldn't break. But silence doesn't shield, it isolates. And that day, I built a wall with every unsaid word. You looked at me like you were waiting. Waiting for something. A gesture, a sentence, a sign. And I gave you nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. And I didn't know how to carry that weight. I watched you leave without saying goodbye. And I didn't stop you. I just sat there, listening to the rain, pretending it was enough to drown the ache. That silence stayed with me. It followed me into the night, into my dreams, into every conversation I couldn't finish. It became a part of me, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I started noticing silence everywhere. In the way people say, I'm fine when they're not. In the pauses between sentences. In the music that plays when no one's talking. It became a language I understood too well. I began to wonder. How many moments in life are lost to silence? How many truths go unspoken? How many hearts drift apart because no one dared to speak? I wasn't always like this. There was a time I spoke freely, laughed loudly, said what I felt. But somewhere along the way, I learned that words could hurt. That vulnerability could be used against you. So I stopped. I built a quiet version of myself. One that smiled politely, nodded, stayed agreeable. But inside I was screaming. That day, the day you left, was the moment I realized how loud silence could be. It wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. It wasn't empty. It was full of everything I couldn't say. And it changed me. Not instantly. Not dramatically. But slowly. Like water wearing down stone. I started writing. Not to be read. Just to speak. Pages filled with unsent letters. Unfinished thoughts. Emotional fragments. It was the only way I knew how to talk. I wrote about you. About the silence. About the way I wished I had said something. Anything before you walked away. And in those pages, I began to hear my own voice again. Not the one I showed the world, but the one I buried. This story isn't about blame. It's not about regret. It's about silence, and how it can shape us, break us, and sometimes teach us how to begin again. So if you've ever sat in silence, wondering what could have been said, you're not alone. I've been there. And this is me finally speaking. After that moment, silence didn't leave me. It followed me into the night, into my thoughts, into the spaces between my words. I kept replaying it, the way you looked at me, the way I looked away. What would have happened if I had spoken? Would things be different now? I started writing messages I never sent. Drafts filled with everything I couldn't say out loud. I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't know how to love you right. But I deleted them all. Some nights, I imagined the conversation we never had. You'd ask me why I pulled away. And I'd tell you. It wasn't because I didn't feel anything. It was because I felt too much. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, everything would spill out. Messy, raw, unfiltered. And maybe you'd walk away. So I stayed silent. And you did walk away. Funny how silence can be both protection and punishment. Kept me safe. But it also kept me alone. I started noticing silence everywhere. In songs. In empty streets. In the way people say, I'm fine when they're not. It became a language I understood too well. And yet, I still wished I had spoken. Even if my voice cracked. Even if my words failed. Because sometimes the risk of being misunderstood is better than the ache of never being known. After you left, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just sat there, quiet. Like the silence had seeped into my bones. I kept replaying that moment. The way you looked at me. The way I looked away. The way the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. And I kept asking myself, why didn't I speak? I had so much to say. But the words felt trapped. Like they were stuck behind a wall I didn't know how to climb. I started writing messages I never sent. I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't know how to love you right. But I deleted them all. Because I didn't think they'd matter anymore. Some nights, I imagined the conversation we never had. You'd ask me why I pulled away. And I'd tell you. It wasn't because I didn't feel anything. It was because I felt too much. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, everything would spill out. Messy, raw, unfiltered. And maybe you'd walk away. So I stayed silent. And you did walk away. Funny how silence can be both protection and punishment. Kept me safe. But it also kept me alone. I started noticing silence everywhere. In songs. In empty streets. In the way people say, I'm fine when they're not. It became a language I understood too well. I began to wonder. How many people carry unsaid things inside them? How many hearts ache quietly, hoping someone will hear what they're not saying? Thought about you. Not just who you were, but who you were to me. You were comfort, kiss, mirror, storm. And I was afraid of all of it. I didn't know how to be vulnerable without falling apart. Didn't know how to say, I need you without sounding weak. Didn't know how to say, I love you without fearing it wouldn't be enough. So I said nothing. And silence became my confession. But silence doesn't heal. Hides. And the longer I stayed quiet, the louder the ache became. I started writing again. Not letters. Just fragments. Sentences that didn't make sense. Feelings I couldn't name. It was messy. But it was mine. And slowly, I began to hear myself. Not the version I showed the world. But the one I buried beneath politeness and fear. I wasn't ready to speak to you. But I was ready to speak to myself. And that was the beginning. One night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I opened a blank page and started writing. Not for you to read. Just for me to finally speak. Began with simple words. I miss you. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to love you right. And then it poured out. Everything I had buried. The fear. The longing. The guilt. The truth I never had the courage to say. I wrote about the silence. How it became my shield. How I thought it would protect me, but instead it pushed you away. How I watched you leave and said nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to show it. I wrote about the way your presence felt like home and danger at the same time. How I wanted to be close, but didn't know how to stay. How I loved you in a way that scared me. I didn't edit. Didn't censor. Just poured everything out. Raw, messy, real. I wrote about the rain. The way it tapped against the window that day. Like it was trying to speak for me. Like it understood what I couldn't say. I wrote about the silence between us. How it wasn't empty. It was full of everything unsaid. Regret, hope, fear, love. I wrote about the way I looked away. Not because I didn't want to see you, but because I didn't want you to see me. Broken, scared, unsure. I wrote about the things I wish I had done differently. The moments I should have held on. The words I should have spoken. And when I finished, I stared at the screen. It felt like I had finally said something. Even if no one heard it. I didn't send the letter. I saved it. Because sometimes the act of speaking, even in silence, is enough to begin healing. And maybe one day, I'll find the courage to let you read it. Or maybe I won't. Maybe this story isn't about you anymore. Maybe it's about me. Finding my voice. Learning to speak. Even if no one's listening. Change didn't come like a lightning strike. Came slowly. Like morning light creeping through the curtains. Like breath returning after holding it too long. I didn't wake up one day healed. I woke up tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of pretending. Tired of being silent. I started small. I said no when I meant no. I said I'm not okay when I wasn't. I let myself feel, even when it hurt. I stopped apologizing for my emotions. Stopped shrinking to fit into spaces that didn't want all of me. Stopped performing peace when I was at war inside. I began to ask questions I used to avoid. What do I want? What do I need? What do I deserve? And slowly I started answering them. Not perfectly, not confidently, but honestly. I revisited old memories. Not to punish myself, but to understand. To see the patterns, the wounds, the places where silence had built walls. I forgave myself for not knowing better, for being scared, for choosing silence when I needed to speak. I stopped calling it weakness, started calling it survival. I began to notice beauty again, in quiet mornings, in kind words, in the way my heart still hoped. Even after everything, I started talking to people, not just surface talk, real talk, about pain, about love, about fear. And I realized, I wasn't alone. Everyone carries something. Everyone has a silence they're trying to break. And in those conversations, I found pieces of myself, reflected in others, held gently, understood. I wasn't fixed, but I was changing, and that was enough. Because healing isn't a destination, it's a direction, and I was finally walking toward it. This is the story I now tell, not the one shaped by silence, but the one born from it. I used to think vulnerability was weakness, that speaking my truth would make me break. But I've learned silence breaks us more. I've carried unsaid things for years, regrets folded into quiet moments, feelings buried beneath polite smiles. But now, I speak, not perfectly, not always bravely, but honestly. I tell people when I miss them. I say, I love you without waiting for the perfect moment. I ask for help when I need it. I let myself be seen, even when I'm messy. 'Cause this is what healing looks like. Not a clean slate, but a canvas full of scars, stories, and strength. I've learned that silence has its place, can be sacred, but it should never be a prison. So I speak, right, sure, not because I have all the answers, but because I finally have a voice. And if you're listening, maybe you've been silent too. Maybe you've held back words that burned inside you. Maybe you've waited for someone to ask, to notice, to care. I'm here to tell you, your voice matters. Your story matters. Even if it's broken, even if it's quiet, even if it's still unfolding. This is mine, and I'm proud of it. So thank you for listening, for holding space, for letting me unfold. And if you're ready, tell yours, because silence may have shaped us, but it doesn't have to define us.